And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Thursday, December 15th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. We got an easy one on our hands. 4-game NBA slate, 2 games locking at 8 o'clock. So everything's going to be happening an hour later than it normally is. But just an easy to manage slate. We got one really good game, Milwaukee and Memphis Grizzlies. We've got the Phoenix Suns and LA Clippers playing tonight, which could also be pretty interesting. But before we get to any of that, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how are you? How did your Wednesday go?
I'm good. My Wednesday did not go well. Just normal shit. Didn't win DFS. Did actually win a sports bet on one of my free bets from FanDuel, so that was good. Still didn't get me in the black, but nice to actually get one of those after running bad on Tuesday. So, yeah, looking forward to getting at it today. Not looking forward to the Miami Heat, but other than that, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's tough. At least the Miami Heat play at 8 o'clock. Like we'll know what's going on at that point. I'm glad that 2 of the games are at 8 o'clock. That way, we're going to get half of the slate's news at a minimum at 7:30. So that's helpful.
Yeah, like I'm not looking forward to talking about Miami. I'm also not looking forward to inevitably Miami deciding they're going to use 7 guys tonight.
I hear you. Anything interesting from last night? How much Jokic did you end up with? Because obviously
not enough.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot. I know on the night slate he was like 28%. I had 20. On the main slate he was 7. I had 7.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we talked about all the value that existed at center, and it turns out that the big man just went crazy.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about it. Like it's always really, really interesting when you get good value at center, because like Lofty harps on it a lot that like you can kind of trust them more than most positions because rebounding is more stable and all of that. But the flip side is that they can still just get smashed in raw points, and it's like, oh well, you still needed to find something else because even Gafford, like obviously on DraftKings, you can just play Gafford and Jokic. I don't know what the winning lineup on FanDuel was, but I'd be pretty surprised if it wasn't Jokic.
I assume it was Jokic.
Even though Gafford
80.
Right, like even though Gafford smashed from a value standpoint, like at center, it's always just interesting because like there's still a good chance, or a reasonable chance at least, that somebody's going to put up a score where it's just like, oh, fuck your point per dollar value. You needed this guy.
Exactly. All right, well, we got 4 games ahead of us. I'm ready to just dive into it if you are.
Yep.
All righty. Well, we will kick it off then with the Miami Heat. They are 4-point favorites in Houston, 222 total. And the problem for the Heat is that they played yesterday, and we don't have a damn clue what they're doing today, other than I think Jimmy Butler's playing, and I think Victor Oladipo will also not play. Oladipo coming off 31 minutes yesterday, which is something to see. My assumption is that we get Butler today. We don't get Oladipo. As for everybody else, your guess is as good as mine. Do you have any leans right out of the gate for the Heat?
No, I have no idea.
Yeah. It's
because it's tough. Like when they say Lowry, like they're undecided on Lowry, normally I would read that as Lowry's not going to play, but we've actually had him already play in spots where it seemed pretty obvious he wasn't. So I don't really have a read.
I know. Are you assuming Butler in?
Yes.
Would you assume Oladipo out?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, for those two just make the most sense. I believe Butler's just going to be able to be there. I don't know why they would be playing Victor Oladipo on a back-to-back after playing 30 minutes. Like, just none of that would make sense to me. After that, though, like, we could lose Lowry, we could lose Bam, we could lose just about anything here, and I would believe it at this point. And kind of makes it difficult to talk about.
Gafford was actually in the winning lineup on FanDuel.
Was he really?
Yeah, no Jokic.
I wonder if that's the optimal lineup or the winning lineup. Like,
right. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, Gafford's 33 at center.
Let me see. I have last night open. If I go by actual score, that can't. There's no way that's right. What is this crunching by? There's absolutely no way that the most optimal lineup last night was Clint Capella.
The first lineup with Jokic came in 17th.
Yeah, I mean, if these scores are to be believed for me, this was yesterday's the 14th. Select all 20 actual score. I'm getting Capella 26.2 fantasy points as the optimal center. That's not possible, is it?
No.
Why am I not getting anybody else? What's causing that? Do I have rules? Yeah. I wish when you click actual, it should just be, should just ignore everything I'm doing. Okay, there we go. Jokic is in the optimal 454.5. That would require you to also have like Lamar Stevens and Killian Hayes. So I don't know how viable that is, but it is Jokic at the top, which I'm not surprised by. Right. You're going to find random unknown pieces that make Jokic be okay.
Yeah, and like whenever you're looking at what the winning lineup was, you also have to keep in mind that it's going to be skewed towards the most popular guys. Like Gafford was 24%.
Right.
Jokic was.
There's just more options.
Right.
Okay.
That's something good to keep in mind in general. Like you'll see it a lot in like NFL. It'll be like, oh, this guy was a good play because he was in the winning lineup. It's like, yeah, 40% of the field played him, so makes sense.
Right. Yeah, you increase your opportunity to be there by simply being owned, whether you're good or bad. That's why you'll see that's why we talk so much about like when guys are 75% owned or something. You need a real big floor game because you just create this situation where there's not enough lineups to catch like the right pieces if you didn't have them.
Right.
Tyler Hero looks good kind of no matter what today. 8K on DraftKings, 7,700 on FanDuel, played 40 minutes yesterday. Obviously, you want guys out and it makes Hero look better, but he's still very, very playable today regardless.
Yeah. The more guys that are out, the better he's going to look, but he's going to look good one way or the other. If everybody relevant were to play, I still think he looks fine. That would clearly be the worst case scenario for his value, but it's still a good spot against Houston. You're still expecting a bunch of minutes out of him. He's still about a fantasy point per minute guy, even if everybody is in.
I think Caleb Martin, if everybody is in, at least on FanDuel at 5K, shooting guard, small forward, is just a good play regardless. Again, as you lop off more guys, those minutes are just not going anywhere. If Bam is in 8,600 on DraftKings, 9,200 on FanDuel, like you're clearly getting to some of these guys no matter what, if everybody's in, because it's only a 4-game slate and it's a matchup against Houston. Like anybody that normally plays starter minutes is a good play for Miami today.
Yeah, and they're all still reasonably priced. It's not like you've gotten situations where with Butler being out, now Bam is 10K or something. Like 8,600 is still fine. 8,700 on Butler is fine. 8K on Hero is fine. And it's just all going to look better if other guys sit.
Who do you think is the most likely guy for the Miami Heat that's a value option that's going to become something? Because like Max Strus is already priced sort of where he's supposed to be. It would have to be Bam out and Dedmon in or something, because like I just don't know if we're going to get to anything valuable enough for a Haywood Highsmith or a Duncan Robinson without losing like a bunch of dudes.
Is Vincent still out?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, because we haven't projected in. I'll say if he plays, he's 3K, but we don't have an injury report yet.
Yeah, I mean, my assumption would have been, I mean, given that he was out yesterday all day, not like questionable or like he was always just out. My assumption then is that he's out for today. Who knows? Obviously, like clearly we're not going to know this until 2:30 today, but my assumption would be that Vincent would be out. Whether that's true, who the hell knows?
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, the DraftKings blurb from last night or from Tuesday night says, that he wouldn't play yesterday. Said it's also unlikely that he'll be available for their next 2 games through Saturday.
Okay.
Didn't make the trip to Indiana. Didn't make the trip to OKC. Seems unlikely he's going to play. Okay. So yeah, I mean that would have been my answer, but otherwise, like Highsmith, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's just at this point in time, this is a conversation for the deeper dive in Live Before Lock.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, also, if Oladipo were to play, then like Highsmith's not the answer either, because he's not in the rotation. But like if Oladipo's out, I assume Highsmith is the next guy up.
We'd be on the same page there. Bobby B's with the super chat said, "Shout out to Adam on the Fultz call. Love you guys." Said I wouldn't have paid him any mind had it not been for Adam.
Yeah. Adam wishes he had more than 12%.
Yeah. Well, I opened up the box score when I was out last night. I was like, oh, he's got 5 stocks or something. That's off to a good start. He can pretty much do whatever he wants
in the first quarter with like 4 stocks.
Yeah, that'll do it, especially on FanDuel.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's put a pin in Miami for the deeper dive and Live Before Lock, because we just need to know more information. They are a random number generator right now. Houston's the opposite of that problem, though. They didn't play yesterday. They basically run the exact same rotation every single day. And to me, regardless of the status of Miami, even if this is a 4-point line like we see, very easy to want to get to Jalen Green, KPJ, Jabari, depending on the site, Şengün, either side. Eric Gordon is awful, but on a 4-game slate in play. Happy to get to any starter today with, in particular, Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr., I think, look pretty good.
Yeah, just pretty favorable pricing here too. Clearly it's not a great matchup against Miami, but 4 game slate, so you can only care so much. 7K on Porter, 6,600 on Green, 61 on Şengün. All of those salaries look very nice overall this year. Just shy of a fantasy point per minute for Green, 1.06 for Porter, 1.16 for Şengün. You're typically going to get 34 or 35 minutes apiece from Green and Porter. You're going to get around 28 from Şengün typically. So all 3 of those guys are going to look good. Jabari Smith's been playing better, and that has resulted in more minutes recently. He only played 29 last game, but we've seen him more frequently get those 34-minute games now than he was earlier in the year. I still think projecting him for 30 to 32 minutes makes sense, but we've just sort of seen him play his way into more minutes more often recently. He's 5,500, so I think that looks fine. You mentioned it with Eric Gordon. It's just a product of it being a 4-game slate, and if other value opens up, he'll disappear pretty quickly, but you're still likely to get around 30 minutes. He averages 2/3 of a fantasy point per minute. Just need him to shoot a little bit better than normal, and it's not difficult for him to get there at 4K. Similarly, on KJ Martin, 3,600, getting like half the ownership of Gordon. Kind of an interesting pivot, just because Martin's likely to play 20 to 22 minutes off the bench, but if anything goes wrong with pretty much anybody ahead of him, he will step into more minutes. So kind of, just an interesting 4-game slate pivot where, a bigger slate, you would not even mention the dude's name. But here it's like, it doesn't take that much for KJ Martin to beat Eric Gordon.
Yeah, it's the starters, KJ Martin, if something happens, or Tari Eason, if you want to hope that something goes wrong with Jabari Smith. I can't really see us I don't think that Knicks or Matthews can get to enough where they would matter. And
right.
Eason being a 1.05 fantasy point per minute guy allows you to only pick up a couple minutes and still be okay.
Right. For guys like Knicks and Matthews, you actually need Kevin Porter Jr. to sprain his ankle in the second quarter and not come back, and then the rotation also to go your way. With guys like Tari Eason, it's just, he's going to play on average 18 minutes behind Jabari Smith. You need Jabari Smith to lose 3 minutes or 4 minutes to foul trouble, and you're going to be in a pretty good spot on Tari Eason because he's a good point per minute guy. KJ Martin, typically going to play 20 to 22. Eric Gordon, KPJ, Green, any of those guys get in foul trouble for a few minutes, and KJ Martin's probably up to 24, 25 minutes. So those two, Eason and Martin, I think are the guys off the bench if you're going to go that route, just because they have easier paths to actually getting there.
Yeah. We're going to talk about a lot of centers that are like Şengün today, whether that's Brook Lopez, Steven Adams, Joe Val, Kelly Olynyk, Ivica Zubac. There are plenty of guys in this center range.
Might not have Zubac, but that's not your point.
Yeah, that's a question for a little bit later. Who knows? In for now, but again, that's an injury report we don't get till quite a bit later as well, unfortunately. I think Houston just looks really good here. They're just a very simple team to try to project, and sort of no matter what happens outside of Houston, it doesn't really change their outlook or how good or not good. Nobody's just only a good play for one reason because there's no value. These guys are just going to exist as quality plays for the day.
Yeah, they're just underpriced. The risks are that as a whole, Houston sucks, and also Miami is good, but at these price tags, I don't want a 4-game slate. I just can't care that much.
Anything else here for Houston?
Nope.
Schedule for the rest of the day is massive. Buckle up, everybody, for this one. 11 a.m. NFL Strategy Show Matchups Edition. That's coming up after Adam and I get finished here. We've got the NHL Strategy Show at 2 p.m. We've got the No House Advantage NFL Show at 3. We've got the No House Advantage NBA Show at 3:30. Adam will be back for the deeper dive at 6 p.m. tonight. You're going to see the schedule on the screen. I think it's on there right now. 6 p.m. for the deeper dive because these games start at 8. 7 p.m. for NBA Live Before Lock. And then we will be simulcasting on YouTube 7:15 tonight. NFL Live Before Lock for Thursday Night Football. That game between the team and the other team. Niners and Seahawks. We got there, man. I typed in NFL and I immediately got my NFL strategy show. It didn't just Google NFL. So I would have had it and not had to do the team versus team thing, but unlucky on that one. But anyway, massive schedule today. If you're looking for live content, we are the place for you to go. The Milwaukee Bucks are 1.5-point dogs in Memphis, 227 total. Outstanding game. Kind of a bummer that Drew Holiday is not going to be around for this one. He is already out with a non-COVID illness. Joe Ingles obviously still out. On the Memphis end, Morant is not on the injury report. Steven Adams not on the injury report. Memphis is at full strength. I would have loved to see these teams at relative full strength, but I guess no Bane, no Drew, kind of equal. We still get to see a pretty good one, but two really good teams. We'll start on the Milwaukee side. We saw Bobby Portis play 32 minutes last time out in Drew's absence. I don't know if I want to go to 32 there. We're getting 30% plus ownership going to Chris Middleton. We're getting 30-ish% going to Giannis. 45 on FanDuel, which is healthy for 12K and with not a lot of value out there. Let's just start with Middleton and Giannis. Anything standing out there for you? Do you want to get more, less? How are you feeling about these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything really stands out. Last game with Middleton, he played 29 minutes, sat the final 3 minutes of the game, so was on pace to play the 32 minutes I think most people expected him to. I'm fine going right back to there. Obviously, there is more usage available for him without Drew Holiday. The risk is that, we do still have Middleton sort of trying to shake off the rust, and so I don't know that he's going to be as good as he was in the past in games where he played without Holiday, but there is still increased usage available for him. 6,800 still looks like a pretty good price tag, and as a result, he's getting the most ownership on the team. Certainly happy to get to Giannis. 4-game slate, raw points always matter, but the reason that it kind of is like they matter more on the 4-game slate is you just have less total options in the mid-range that can compete. When you take Giannis and you say, like, on a bigger slate, oh, well, at 12-2, if Giannis scores 65, you probably don't really want him. The reason is because you have, 28 to 10K players that are capable of doing that, and chances are one or two of them are going to. On a 4-game slate, obviously there's fewer options, and it becomes a lot more likely that if Giannis scores 65, even though it's not great for his salary, he's beating the next closest guy by 15 points. It's a lot more possible for that to happen. So that's why he's getting more ownership here, and I think it's deserved. More willing on a shorter slate to just find ways to get Giannis in as opposed to on bigger slates. The Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez minutes are really interesting. When I was projecting that game against Golden State, I was giving them both a lot of minutes, and I wasn't super comfortable with it because Portis's minutes had sort of been trending down, and it was that matchup with Golden State. It was like, man, they might just run wings more. I don't really know. But so I'm glad to see that they went 32 and 28 between them. Typically, I think 32 is going to be Lopez and 26 to 28 is going to be Portis. But this matchup is a lot more favorable for them to play alongside each other than the Golden State matchup was. So I think, or at least, as like you can argue Golden State's fine because Draymond doesn't shoot and neither does Looney. But with Jaren Jackson and Steven Adams / Brandon Clark in the front court, it kind of sets up as a spot where you would expect them to play more anyway. So pretty comfortable going to heavy minutes on both of them. Portis 6,200, Lopez 58, makes them both look pretty decent. Pat Connaughton 3,700 off the bench, should play mid-20s minutes. He only played 19 last game, but I think he typically plays a little bit more. Not a great point per dollar guy, or point per minute guy, but point per dollar, he's going to look fine here. Javon Carter at 4,300 is interesting. We got around 30 minutes from him. He played 28.3, lost 3 minutes to garbage time. The issue with Carter is that when he plays with Giannis, he is basically a zero. Like he's like 2/3 of a fantasy point per minute. And the thing you have to keep in mind too, Chris Middleton kind of replaces Drew Holiday. So we had a bunch of games this year where Javon Carter was a starter with Drew Holiday and with Giannis. And he was just sort of a guy that, on slates with no value, maybe you would gamble on, but it wasn't the same as when he was replacing Holiday and Middleton was out too, or Giannis was out too. So right. I think that from a value standpoint, with the way things look right now, he makes some sense. He's getting 14% ownership, but you do want to keep in mind that his rates are not likely to be very good here.
Yeah, right now we're seeing Lopez, Grayson Allen, Javon Carter, Bobby Portis, and Pat Connaughton, all with basically the same ownership projection on DraftKings at around 15%. Yeah. Do you have a guy in that group that you would expect to be getting to most?
I honestly think it's probably Grayson Allen.
Yeah, I agree. Shooting guard, small forward, 4,600 minutes really don't seem to be going anywhere. um, revenge narrative, something
Oh
like
yeah.
that.
The group you said was Connaughton, Carter, Allen, right?
Well, I mean, technically it's Lopez, Allen,
Okay. Well,
Carter,
I mean, I
Portis,
think I probably
Connaughton.
get to more Lopez than Allen.
Mhm.
Probably. I don't know. Center. It's
Sure.
center, so it's kind of tough. But
Right.
out of
I think
Connaughton, Carter,
Lopez looks
Allen,
the best, but you're slightly more limited with his
right.
status.
But yeah, I did want to just reiterate the Javon Carter thing because like I did it too because we got the Drew Holiday news out in the middle of a deeper dive last slate, and so my
Yeah.
first thought was like, oh, and it was a slate where like we didn't have a lot of value. So my first thought was like, oh, Javon Carter is going to look great, like play a bunch of Javon Carter, and then once I got off the show and had time to go back and like actually redo everything and like look at rates and everything, I was like, oh shit, like Javon Carter still sucks.
Yeah. Yes, he does. Very interesting setup here for Milwaukee today.
Yeah.
I don't think that we could really talk too much about like George Hill or any of those other also rans. Those guys are just not good enough permanent dudes.
Yeah, it's just not going to get there.
On the Memphis end, we're basically at full strength. Like, obviously, we don't have Desmond Bane, but we haven't had him for ages. So this is just pretty standard issue Memphis stuff. At which point, we've got Ja 19% owned on DraftKings, 15 on FanDuel. We've got Steven Adams 14% owned on DraftKings, 5% owned on FanDuel. He's $900 more expensive on FanDuel. I think I like Adams more than I like Lopez just in this game, even at the same ownership. Let's just start with Ja and Adams for now. I like them a lot more than the public seems to like them.
Yeah, I think I do as well. Only 10-4 on Morant. And, I'd said it before with the raw points with Giannis that there's not that many guys that can do similar stuff. Morant is certainly one of them. And right now, with the way value looks, I think those, $1,800 on DraftKings is probably going to be pretty useful in constructing the rest of your lineup. Morant's been about a 1.5 fantasy point per minute guy without Bane. You should see around 33, 34 minutes from him here. I think he looks really, really good.
So do I. I like him more than I like Giannis just because I think there's not enough value out there yet to really prioritize it. Like you said, Giannis can be the highest scorer here. Morant can be the highest scorer here. Zion is my third guy, but I've got Giannis 16 points ahead of this like Devin Booker, Paul George, Bam range. Someone that's projected for like 40 fantasy points can get up in that 55, 60 range on their best days, but if you're asking me if I have to pick between Ja and Giannis right now, I think I'm picking Ja.
I think I would lean that way. I mean, right now we have Giannis projected 10 points higher than Morant, which I think is reasonable. But it just comes down to the value. Like, do I? Because the thing is too, the value plays that get you Giannis are going to be popular, and they're going to be in lineups with Giannis. So you can say like, oh, well, I'll just suck it up and play Pat Connaughton. Like, cool. Every Giannis lineup is sucking it up and playing Pat Connaughton, so you're not gaining anything there. It's so that's the thing too. We haven't gotten to any like interesting value. Maybe if you want to play Giannis and like Tari Eason and hope for the best, like that's actually an interesting combination. But at the same time, I'm gonna prefer the John Morant and some 5K guy or $5,500 guy instead of Tari Eason version. So yeah, I think I'm with you, especially with the ownership coming into Giannis. It would be different if Morant was the one pulling a bunch of ownership and you could say like, okay, well, I'm just gonna get 10% Giannis on a 4-gamer. But right now, I think I would probably get more Morant also.
And so we're clear here. That is
like,
not to invalidate Giannis Antetokounmpo.
No, he looks great. If it turns out that I can build lineups and they grade out well for me and I have Giannis, cool. But, with it being 10-30, I'm kind of just guessing at, like, I know how my process works and what I typically land on. My guess right now is that I would end up with the data we have right now and the information we have right now, just getting more Morant because I think those lineups would end up grading out better for me. And I agree with you that when you talk about, who could be the highest scorer on the slate, obviously it could be a Jimmy Butler or a Bam or something, but that's really unlikely. It's Giannis as the odds-on favorite, Morant, Zion as the guys most likely to beat Giannis out of everybody else, George and Booker kind of a tier behind Morant and Williamson, and then just like a drop off to where everybody else would be shocking.
Yep. We're on the same page there. Single digit ownership to Dylan Brooks, 5% ownership to Jaren Jackson. Both of those numbers stand out to me as very interesting GPP plays, particularly Jaren Jackson with the power forward eligibility. It doesn't take much for him for things to like break well. And when things break well for him, they break well aggressively good. Like, you're getting stocks out the ass for him.
What'd you say?
You end up getting stocks out the ass, and then he's just tacking on a standard issue points, rebounds, assist line, and you need him.
Yeah, I mean, he set a career high and tied a Memphis record in blocks last game in 23 and a half minutes. And then you had Lindquist on Twitter complaining about how bad he runs because Jaren Jackson didn't get to play the whole fourth quarter. But yeah, like he's great. The only question on Jackson is the playing time. You have seen it ramping up a bit. He's averaged overall now 10 games where Bane has been out and Brooks and Morant have been in, 26 and a half minutes per game, 1.34 DraftKings points per minute, has a 25% usage rate. The blocks are obviously there. This is certainly a spot where you could see Jaren Jackson foul trouble come back. But I think even, projecting 26, 27 minutes, knowing if he does avoid foul trouble and everything goes perfectly, he can get 29 or 30. I think 26, 27 is a good projection. And, like I said, 1.35 DraftKings points per minute.
8 blocks in this most recent game, 6 stocks the game before that, 7 the game before that. He's had other games this year with 5 and 7 and 5 and 5. Like, this dude he's a block party constantly. Does foul a lot. I will say this season, 3.8% foul rate, 60th percentile. He's actually been better than average for big men at avoiding fouls. Last year, he was basically around league average. He's not been as bad as he was for his first 3 years, where he just literally couldn't stop himself. Last year was right around average. This year's a little bit better than average. He's normal now.
Yeah.
This isn't a great spot for it, but it's not the same for everybody else. It's not the same disaster that we knew it to be, where he just literally would breathe on people and it was a foul.
Right. Yeah. This isn't, a couple of years ago, it was we would have this talking point where it was well, if Jaren Jackson can avoid foul trouble, but it was Jaren Jackson is not going to avoid foul trouble. He does not know how. Now he is normal.
100th percentile in block rate, 6.6%. He's been 90 plus for most of his career. 85th percentile steal rate at 1.6%. We're talking about probably the best stock guy in the league. Yeah, it's easy for him to put up a big number. So I'm happy to get there. Happy to get to Brooks. He's 20% owned on FanDuel. He's got shooting guard, small forward. He's a little bit cheaper. So I get that. What do you like here for the rest of Memphis?
Jackson, Morant, you mentioned Adams before, 14% ownership, 5,200. I think he's just a little bit underpriced. He should play 28 to 30 minutes here, assuming he can avoid foul trouble. So I think he's interesting as well. If you want to take shots on Dillon Brooks being able to make the shots that he takes, sure, he's low owned, but he is also 7K. You've seen that price tag come up a bit, and, playing with Jackson and with Morant isn't ideal. In the 11 games that he's played with them, 0.94 DraftKings points per minute, 25% usage rate. So basically just a last guy in type tournament option. Brandon Clark's gotten expensive enough. I'm not planning on going there. For me, I think it's pretty much Morant, Adams, and Jackson.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I would like to get to Zaire Williams and try to be there for the day that he gets 24 minutes, but he's also a terrible per minute guy, so He needs a lot more than that.
Yeah, the rotation last game was interesting because Jake LaRavia wasn't in it. Yeah. David Roddy still was actually ahead of Williams, but you think they're going to get to where Williams is playing 24 minutes?
I think that's the goal.
Yeah, I just don't know if
he's just going to pick up a lot of random minutes from anybody. I think that we see Conchar get into that 24 range. I think Zaire Williams gets into that 24 range. And you're just sort of picking and choosing depending on the day and what's going well, which one of those guys actually gets to 24, which one is at 20. But I think the mid tier of Memphis is just going to always fluctuate.
Yeah, that's fair.
They want him to be that guy just because of his profile, but
sure.
It's never going to be. I don't think it's going to be anything. I don't think we're ever going to be setting Zaire Williams in for 24 minutes in our projections.
Okay, yeah, that's more what I was saying was because to do that, you would have to basically kick Roddy and LaRavia out of the rotation.
I could see one of those guys just taking a beat.
Yeah, I think one could. And Williams was clearly ahead of LaRavia last game, but Roddy was also in
there. Anything else for Memphis?
No.
To Prize Picks we go, the presenting sponsor of this show. If you haven't signed up at Prize Picks yet, and honestly, you should have done this ages ago if you watch this show regularly, but if you haven't, there's a link in the description. Click it, sign up at Prize Picks. They will match a deposit of yours up to $100. And right now, their deal, they're in the middle of Picksmas. It's day 2 of Picksmas. You can get a $20 protected play if you sign up today. I don't really know what that means, so let's look at this. Win or your cash back up to $20 is what I'm seeing here. So as long as you get an entry here, your net losses will be paid back up to $20. So you can basically it's like essentially a $20 free bet is the way that I'm reading it. That's for today. But moving forward, there's going to be new Picksmas promos every single day. You're picking player props, over-unders. Try to put together 5 on one card, and you can net up to 10x your entry fee. I'm going to hit Adam with a couple points props. Actually, we got fantasy score props. They are up for today. So we could look at fantasy scores. Always a little bit easier for us. So remember, this is FanDuel scoring, 3-point stocks, 1-point turnovers. How do you feel about 57.5 for Giannis Antetokounmpo?
We have 57.4, so I feel like it's correct.
I have 58, so I also feel like it's correct. This one's actually surprising me. 33.5 for Chris Middleton.
We have 34.5.
Interesting. I have 31.5. I assume that I was just like generally high on Chris Middleton, and most people generally think that I am. I might actually take the under on Middleton there, which is not what I was expecting. Ja Morant, 47.5.
I don't like this game. We have Ja Morant at 47.5.
Okay. I have him at 49.5. So I will happily take the over. Let's do one final one. I think actually we're going to do two in combination. Two centers, very comparable. Brook Lopez is 27.5.
Okay, we have 29.5, so I like the over there.
Okay. I got 30, so I'm happily going to take Brook Lopez. And then Steven Adams, 3 points less than Lopez, 24.5.
We have 25-3 on Adams, so slight over. And that's in 26 minutes, so I like the over on Adams because I think he plays more than that.
Yeah, I got him at 29 in 28 minutes. So sign me up for some Steven Adams. I think the Steven Adams one is the best one we saw. But take advantage during Picksmas, everybody. Link in the description. We go to game number 3. The New Orleans Pelicans, 2-point favorites in Utah, 232 total. We just saw this game 2 nights ago. It was a bit of a blowout, but I think we're running it straight back again. It's clearly the best game on the slate. 232 is a massive total. For New Orleans, no Brandon Ingram still, no Jose Alvarado, which does create a little bit of an interesting dynamic. We're getting 30-ish% ownership coming to Zion, 35-ish depending on the site for CJ, 20-something% going to Trey Murphy. And then we get 33% at 5,400 going to Jonas Valanciunas. That just seems like a lot. I sort of get it, but at the same time, with the amount of centers that are out there that are going to get a little bit less than Joe Val, I'm kind of nervous.
Yeah, and we're also doing the thing again where Larry Nance is projected for half the ownership of Joe Val, even though he's less expensive and likely to play the same minutes, if not more. Joe Val, 5,400. Look, he looks good. We've talked about it. Like, I think there's a tendency because, we do the show every day for the entire season, and there's a tendency to just be like, oh yeah, Joe Val doesn't play enough minutes. He's risky, blah, blah, blah. At 5,400, he's priced for the 22, 23 minutes that he typically gets. So anytime he does play more minutes, he's just going to destroy this. And then in a good percentage of the games, he's just going to beat it anyway because he's priced correctly. So I think he's a good play. Ownership makes sense. 22 to 23 minutes of Joe Val is the same as 28 minutes of Steven Adams. Better probably than 28 minutes of Steven Adams typically. So I think he's a good play. Looking at the rotation last game, I am concerned because they once again did not go to Larry Nance alongside Joe Val. The game blew out, so you didn't get a closing lineup in the game, but you did get Larry Nance closing the first half. You got him subbing in for Joe Val because of fouls a little bit earlier than usual in the third quarter. In the first half, though, Joe Val played 7 minutes to open, and then he played about 5 minutes in the second quarter, went back to the bench. Nance closed the half. So you're basically looking at that normal 24-24 split. It just makes me like both guys.
Yep, I agree. And it just makes me more interested in Nance because of the ownership that we're seeing and the price and the positionality. Like
I will say he was 20% owned last slate and not the 10 that was projected. So I think there is a chance that he's somebody that sort of just is difficult to model ownership wise, and we could just be a little bit low.
Obviously, you have no issue getting to Zion on a 4-gamer. He's just really good. What do you want to do with CJ with all of the ownership that's coming in?
He just kind of looks neutral to me. Like he's going to play 34, 35, maybe 36 minutes. Actually, he probably plays more minutes now with Alvarado out, which is nice. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy, a little north of it. 7,200, certainly a reasonable price tag. I think he's a good play. I would be a lot more excited about him if he had shown any signs of being the CJ McCollum that we got last season. But still, it's another spot where you kind of have to take a step back and just think about it in terms of salary and production. Like, even if this is what he is, it's disappointing, but it's a fantasy point per minute guy that's likely to play mid to upper 30s at 7,200 in a pretty appealing spot.
What do we do with the rest of this team? Where does the Alvarado being out, does that open up anything, or is that just sort of solidify what this rotation is going to be, where you're kind of going to get like 20 minutes out of Najee Marshall, you're going to get a little over 20 minutes for Dyson Daniels. Herb Jones has the ability to soak up a couple extra minutes now, I would imagine. Devontae Graham is just like a guard that's going to exist because they're getting a lot of ownership, but at this point, I think we just sort of have a pretty firm rotation.
So do I. So I think there is still some volatility here, which is interesting. Dyson Daniels has clearly staked the claim as like a real rotation piece. And so I think he's going to get his minutes. And, he's ahead of Devontae Graham for sure. Najee Marshall, same thing. But I am curious exactly how many of the Alvarado minutes, because Alvarado typically gives you like 20, 21 minutes off the bench. I'm curious how many of those do end up funneling to Devontae Graham, because he's only 3K on DraftKings. If you get 16, 17 minutes from Devontae Graham, he's at least interesting until other value opens up. Mm-hmm. The thing is, they don't have to go that route. Like Devontae Graham in the first half last game played about 6 minutes. He didn't play at all in the second half. They could conceivably just say, all right, he's going to play 12 minutes. Herb Jones plays a little bit more. Daniels plays more. Najee plays more. You get a couple extra minutes for CJ McCollum. Like if you want to, you can project. I guess it's interesting because like when you sit and map out the rotation for this team, if you say, give me a reasonable looking rotation that has Devontae Graham play 12 minutes, you can do it. And if you say, give me a reasonable looking rotation that has Devontae Graham play 20 minutes, you can also do it. So that's sort of what's interesting to me is that like, I think I probably will land in like the 16-minute range on him. But at 3K and low ownership, it's at least worth considering as a very high risk dart throw.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy at all. Let's see.
I think Herb Jones is going a little bit under owned at 8%.
I mean, I could see that 4,500 on DraftKings, 5,200 on FanDuel at 7%. There's just the upside that he plays real minutes, and right. I think that's worth the shot if he's unowned already.
Right. So I don't know if he was going to close the last game, but I think it's reasonable to assume that he was based on him subbing in. So in the fourth quarter, you had McCollum come back with 9 minutes and 30 seconds to go. Zion came back with 9 minutes to go. Jones came back with a little over 8 minutes to go. They all played down to the 6-minute, 7-second mark and left. So to me, it looked like Jones would have been in the closing lineup. If he plays the rest of the game, he gets to about 26 and a half minutes. In his first game back where he was limited. Now this does kind of go the opposite direction of, we talked about guys on limits that played overtime, and it's like, oh, well, it was good to see him play those minutes. Even if they wanted him to play 26 minutes, he did only play 20. So there's a real chance that they're like, all right, well, this game, if you had played 26 last game, we'd feel comfortable going to 28, 30 here. But since you played 20, we're still going to cap you at 26. Like, I think that's certainly possible. But if you get 26 minutes of Herb Jones at 4,500 and 7% ownership, I think that projects as an interesting option.
Yeah, I gave him 26 minutes. I'd be happy to get, he came out of my sim a little bit ahead of that ownership number. And I think I could pretty easily put him at 28 if I wanted to and feel comfortable with that. So I have no problem getting to him. Anything else we should be touching on here for the Pelicans?
I don't think so. I mean, we kind of briefly touched on Dyson Daniels, Najee Marshall. Like, they're both cheap. They're going to get enough run that they're interesting plays. They're getting the ownership. Trey Murphy at 5K. I don't think we mentioned him, but he's getting 26% ownership. He's another one that just looks good. He's likely to play low to mid 30s. He's just another guy where on a bigger slate, he would kind of be an afterthought where he's like 5% owned. But on this one, he's just going to fit easily into lineups.
Alrighty. Then we'll go to the Utah side. And for Utah, it's no Sexton, no Fontecchio. Kind of the normal, what we should expect to be the normal Utah rotation now without Sexton there. We had Conley come back, play 29 minutes after missing Saturday's game for rest. Markkanen finally back, played 31. Clarkson played 28 and a half. Beasley played 31. Again, this was the opposite side of this Pelicans blowout, or vice versa. So we're getting like 20% ownership going to Clarkson, 28 to Mike Conley at 5,300 on DraftKings. I don't like that at all. Would be happy to go a little bit lower. Markkanen, Olynyk, Beasley getting a little bit of love. Beasley at 5,900 on DraftKings might be a little bit too expensive, but I think we kind of know what we want to do here for Utah, and that's go straight back to Jared Vanderbilt, assuming he's going to absolutely destroy the Pelicans, right?
Yeah, of course. I didn't realize till just now that he had only played 22 and a half minutes in that game.
Yeah.
Did look like he was going to close. So, but I think, we have, to me, the most interesting thing to look at from that game is just the rotations. And we got what we expected between Vanderbilt and Kessler. I think you can project that as like a 25-23 or 26-22 split in Vanderbilt's favor, assuming that he starts. It's going to make them both look decent. Vandy's price tag did jump to 5,700. Kessler is at 4,900. But it's interesting to me because neither of them are getting any ownership. And I think it's a situation where the medium projection is going to be kind of mediocre for both of them, but it's not going to take a lot for one of them to just have a good game. So I do think they are interesting tournament plays. I just wouldn't play them together. The other thing I really wanted to see from last game was what Lauri Markkanen's rotation would look like, because remember, we've talked about it in the games that he played previously with Mike Conley, his production per minute didn't suffer. It's just that he wasn't playing as many minutes as he was with Conley out. My expectation was that the reason wasn't Conley. It was just that Utah had changed up their rotations. And that's what we saw last game. He played around 17 minutes in the first half, played a total of 31 minutes, lost 5 minutes to garbage time. So was, on track to play 34 to 36 minutes. So I like Markkanen here. 8,100, I think, looks pretty good. Conley at 5,300 played 29 minutes, didn't close. I'm not saying I don't think he ever is playing the entire fourth quarter there, but I think you can project 28 to 30 minutes from Conley. Clarkson should still play a lot. I think this is a very appealing team still.
Yeah, you and me both. What's not appealing, though, is 6K for Walker Kessler on FanDuel. Thanks for making that a non-thing.
I mean, yeah, 4,900 on DraftKings is difficult too.
Yeah,
he's only really getting mentioned on DraftKings because of it being a 4-gamer and him being 2% owned. Anybody that is going to be 2% owned and at least has a path to 26 plus DraftKings points is going to be interesting. But, more often than not, he's going to project for 4x.
Yeah, it's not ideal. I don't know what else I have to add for Utah. They just seem really easy to talk about. Conley's ownership is the only thing that concerns me.
Oh, and for anybody looking at last game, Kelly Olynyk played 16 minutes because of foul trouble. Wasn't anything rotation related. He's another one that, barring foul trouble, I expect to be playing around 32 minutes.
Yeah, at 10% owned right now, 6K power forward center. I mean, we saw guys that are comparable to that right now pulling more ownership.
Yeah,
that to me just look a little bit more interesting.
Ownership
I'd
and everything.
rather have Olynyk than Lopez.
Probably my favorite play from Utah right now.
Who is?
Olynyk.
Oh, yeah.
Considering ownership, everything else on DraftKings, I think Olynyk's probably my favorite play.
I agree. I think Markkanen would probably be second.
Yep, those were the two I was trying to decide between.
There we go. Great minds, Anything else for the Jazz?
Nope.
All right, let's close this bad boy out then. Phoenix Suns, 1.5-point dogs in LA against the Clippers. Basically, this one's going to be kind of tough. Q tag on Devin Booker, Q tag on DeAndre Ayton, no campaign. I mean, apparently Booker went through practice yesterday. Ayton didn't. I believe that's what I got told during the process show. Assuming everybody is in, I don't find Phoenix to be all that interesting. The 219 total doesn't really help that much. Chris Paul's already up to 8,200. Obviously, feel free to play Devin Booker anytime he is starting and playing on a 4-game slate. But if everybody is in, this place is difficult to want to go for any sort of volume. If Ayton ends up out, we're probably getting a very cheap center, whether that's $3,100 Jock Landale or whatever the hell price Biyombo is. I don't have him in the rotation. Either way, we're going to one or both of those guys.
Yeah. Last game, Biyombo was the one that started the second half. Then you had Lando back him up. They would both look very good. On a 4-gamer, I think it would be a situation, especially if other value doesn't open up, where you actually can just play them together as well. If Ayton is in at 7,700, he looks fine. He'll look a little bit better if Booker is out. Chris Paul, 8,200 on DraftKings. They go weeks without adjusting pricing, and then they just ramp everything up. If Ayton's out, or if Booker is out, Paul looks interesting at 8,200, but certainly not the just plug and play guy that he was at 6,200. If Booker is back, I don't think I can really get to Paul at 8,200. Booker at 9,300 would be interesting. He's only pulling 3% ownership right now, I assume, because he's questionable, but he is one of the few guys we mentioned that could actually put up the score you want if you don't have Giannis.
He is. Yeah, 9,300 works. 8,900 on FanDuel. Obviously, the Q tag is keeping down this 5.5% ownership because he looks really, really good at 8,900 if he is in. That said, going to be hard to talk here. Do you have a way that you would want to approach this with this game, with it being a 4-game slate, with this game starting at 10:30, where we probably won't know anything? Like, how do you generally want to handle these situations where you have two starters with Q tags?
I typically project them in and just end up swapping. Unless like if we get like shoot around news and it's like Ayton didn't go through shoot around, then I'll project him out. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean it's a tricky spot. I don't have I don't think there is a perfect solution to it. It's kind of there's pros and cons no matter what. I tend to if I think they're truly questionable, I tend to just project them in because the problem I prefer that problem where it's just like, oh, I want to get to this value, but it's tough because I have guys locked. I prefer that problem to the well, if I project Devin Booker out and I project Ayton out, like Ayton's a good example. If I just guess Ayton's not going to play, and I'm gonna end up with a massive amount of Biyombo and Lando, especially because the ownership is going to be projected to be low when I make my lineups. So they're just going to get jammed into every lineup. And then we're going to get to this game and they're going to be like, Ayton's playing. And I'm going to be like, cool, I have 100% of a backup center. So like, and I don't think like you can make the case where it's like, yeah, but it gets offset by the times that you're right. I don't think it does. So like it's not like it's every time Ayton gets ruled out, I just win the slate. Then it would be like, okay, well, I'm just going to project him out. But realistically, it's every time Ayton gets ruled out, people late swap, and he still ends up being Biyombo/Lando still end up being popular enough. Like I have an advantage, but it's not like a one that I'm just going to actualize every single day. So to me, it's just better to swap to what I can when we get the news.
Anything else you want to touch on for Phoenix?
Nope. Mikal Bridges should play 1 million minutes. If Booker is out, Bridges shot a lot last game. He did not make many of them, but
no, he did not. That's ultra bad.
He hit my median projection on him on like 25 field goal attempts.
It's so bad. He was 4 for 24 from the field, 2 of 10 from 3, 8 of 8 from the line, which really saves it. He got to 18 real points on a 4 of 24. It's hard to do. Can't get any worse than that.
No, it was bad.
That's a floor shooting game for sure.
It was. But yeah, I mean, he's going to play enough minutes one way or the other where he's kind of interesting. But if Booker is out, certainly like him more.
All right. On the Clippers side, there's not a lot that we could really do here. They're playing on a back-to-back. We do not know the status currently on Ivica Zubac. I assume John Wall is playing today because he didn't play yesterday. And I would bet my life that Kawhi Leonard is not playing today. Those things seem like the easiest things to assume. Norm Powell is definitely out, but I don't know what to do with Zubac. If he's in, he certainly looks good at 5,300 on DraftKings or 5,700 on FanDuel. I think Paul George is pretty interesting either way, although I tend to get less Paul George than everybody else always. Marcus Morris, to me, very interesting, 4,900 on FanDuel. What do you think you're getting to here for the Clippers, who saw Robert Covington played 19 minutes yesterday? By the way, flat 3K power forward center for Covington. This could break really interesting. He could be the best value play on today's slate.
Yeah. So the Zubac piece is big. Yeah. He actually played in the second half last game, just didn't start the second half, which is weird. But yeah, so that's a whole separate thing that I don't know what to make of it. But if he starts at 5,300, I think he's an interesting tournament play. Like he's a good point per minute guy. He would look like Steven Adams and other guys in that price range, Brook Lopez. If he's out, I think it's likely you get Batum starting. He's 4,400, would probably play a lot of minutes, would look like a pretty good value at 4,400. I agree with you on Covington. He was in the rotation one way or the other. He played 7 minutes in the first half, played about 9 minutes outside of garbage time in the second half, and then picked up 3 minutes of garbage time. He's kind of like he's like Devontae Graham to me, where I'll probably, if everybody ends up in, I'll probably project him for like 16 minutes. And at 3K and low ownership, it becomes interesting.
Yeah.
Just from this could break really well perspective, but not anything I'm confident in. If you get Zubac out, then I think you do give more minutes to Covington and he starts to look better as Batum would.
Yeah, especially with that power forward as well. That's what really makes Covington become a problem if we get Zubac out. Obviously, we're on the same page. There's no Kawhi's not playing this game. He's never playing a back-to-back again in his life.
Right.
You assume Wall is in?
I assume Wall is in, yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else stand out to you here? Wall, Mann, Kennard, Jackson, or is it just like I'm probably just going to have one of those guys in most of the things that I do, and it's just going to be random?
I mean, Paul George, I think at 9,200 stands out.
Yeah, he doesn't count.
Okay, I'll say we hadn't mentioned him, so I wasn't sure. But of the non-Paul George guys, no, I think it's sort of Wall looks fine at 5,600. Jackson looks fine at 5,200. They're both pulling 8 to 11% ownership. Kennard at 3,800 should play 22 to 24 minutes more if other guys get ruled out. Morris looks fine. It's just a team like across the board is getting 10 to 15% ownership, and they all probably should. There's not one guy that stands out with the exception of George.
They really do help from a late swap perspective, just because like you can get to sort of any part of the Clippers that are going to play if you have to start moving stuff around. Like they have a viable guy up and down the board because everybody's just going to be out there.
Yeah, so exactly.
That helps when you have to navigate like Suns news.
Yeah, like the fact that you're just going to have a Clipper in a lot of lineups is certainly useful there. Just wanted to check in the last game that Wall and Jackson played, so 2 games ago, December 12th. Wall played 19 minutes, Jackson played 27. That was a game that blew out. It looked like Jackson was going to be in the closing lineup along with Kawhi, George. Well, so the last real lineup on the floor was Jackson, Kawhi, George, Kennard, Batum. So I don't know if they would have subbed, Marcus Morris back in or whatever. But the big takeaway, I was trying to look at Wall and Jackson's rotations. They played a total of like 2.5 minutes alongside each other. So I will still probably just be sticking with my like 30 minutes for Jackson, 22 for Wall.
I have 28, 23 right now. Not that I have a great feel for it.
Yeah.
Not much else we could say for the Clippers. We're going to need an injury report. Marcos, when I say no one is on the injury report, it's because the injury report does not exist for the Clippers. The limit does not exist. Hopefully we get some news at 3:30 Eastern time when their injury report comes out, but lots of stuff hanging in the balance for that late night hammer. Makes it a little bit difficult to discuss. Are you doing GPP videos and injury report videos today?
Yep.
Alrighty. And then you'll be on the deeper dive 6 to 7?
Sure.
There we go, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this one. Another strategy show in the books. NFL strategy show, matchup edition, coming up next. Make sure you're watching everything today. Going to be a tough 4-gamer. Good luck to everybody. We'll talk to you later. Peace.